business-like topic. So to close that. So I know we had done this earlier. We did part of this earlier. This was going to happen with the right after March break, and then it got postponed a little bit. Just, we talked a bit about some of the skills, maybe a bit of some of the characteristics of entrepreneurs this time. And if you feel that you have those kinds of characteristics, then this might be something for you. Also, what I have noticed just casually is there is really no one is hiring at the moment. We're really contracting as an economy, so it is a bit of an opportunity to start start a business of your own. Not that it's really difficult. Not to say that it would be easy, but there is an opportunity. I mean, in a way, you're not quitting a job to do it. And if you do have a very good idea of a new way of doing things, I've noticed some university students are trying to start their own businesses. So I went through the classroom, and I don't think that I covered this, although the slides do pair with my entrepreneurial skills one. So unfortunately, right now, risk taking is one of it, and that might be one of the main reasons that people choose not to be an entrepreneur. And you can see right now why that is, because they're sort of the first ones to be hurt by this. On Yonge Street, some of the businesses are reopening, but they don't have the same resources as a large chain. They don't have, in the US, they haven't been able to get the same access to financing as some bigger companies have. So there is, a risk of closing, a risk of losing your customers. And they try to minimize risk, by having a very, very good idea, by planning, by training themselves. But sometimes things happen, these extraordinary events that you can't do anything about. So a lot of times people might be teachers. I know I don't want to really be self-employed because I don't want to deal with the risk. So risk taking is sort of something you need to be comfortable with as an entrepreneur. Trying to view problems as a way to solve them. I've been reading a lot about Howard Schultz's career with Starbucks, and what happened with him was he built the company in the 90s. He had this idea. He visited a coffee shop in Milan. It was very, very luxurious. He enjoyed it a lot. Started his own chain in Seattle. It actually wasn't Starbucks. It was another chain called Il Giornale, the journal in Italian. I apologize for that pronunciation. And I just want to make sure no one's trying to get into the classroom here. Share my, did I share? So no one told me I wasn't sharing my screen. Sorry about that. I apologize. Trying to practice, we're getting better at sort of these online skills, but we still make mistakes. So I apologize for that. Next time, someone just speak up, please. So again, we're talking about entrepreneurs having risk taking, because right now you can see the downside to it. We can talk about having vision. So he started off, he didn't own Starbucks at the beginning. He had worked for them. Then he went to Europe, and he's like, hey, there's this new way of serving coffee there. I think it will really translate to North America. They said, no, you're wrong. So he started his own coffee chain. It was called Il Giornale, the journal in Italian. Had a few chains around Seattle, and eventually it came to him the opportunity to buy Starbucks. And they decided to keep Starbucks as a name because it was a little more famous. and the brand was a little more better known in the Seattle area. And so he saw that opportunity when everyone else was making, so he built it up until about the end of the 90s, and he stepped aside as CEO. And a new person took over as CEO and continued to open up new stores, but they weren't doing as well. They had too many locations. They were selling things like toys, they were selling music, they were selling other products. Uh, the annual year-over-year performance started to decline. So Howard Schultz, I'm reading his book right now. He didn't, he could have cashed out. He could have, said, okay, we had a good run. I'm going to sell my shares and move on. He decided to step back in and become the CEO again. And he said, okay, there's these problems. People don't spend as much money as they used to at Starbucks. Well, what could be an answer? Well, one answer is let's improve the quality of our coffee so people come back more times per week. And then he said, let's invest in the Clover press so people buy more expensive coffee. He made some changes. I haven't gotten to the end of all the changes yet, but he saw that the company was in trouble, and he saw that it was an opportunity to come back and make it better. So that would be something not everyone would do, but he did, and that helped him succeed. Curious, um, like to know how things work. Do you take time to try and invent different things? Bill Gates, Paul Allen, they were always in their computer lab at school, learning extra things about coding. So if you think you might be a curious person, that would be a time that can be, something where you can be a good entrepreneur. I'm not going to, show this right now, but he goes and talks about exactly meeting Paul Allen in the 1970s. Sometimes is there anything you've been curious about this year? I'm trying to make it suggest to students how they can use this time as wisely as possible. And it is true your mark can't go down, but on the other hand, this becomes an opportunity where there's something you always needed to learn how to do. You were always wondering about, get some lessons on the web, watch some YouTube clips, learn about that one opportunity, you've always wanted to. Maybe read a book that you've always been trying to get to, but it's at the bottom of the pile. If you're curious about things, although this is really a frustrating time for everyone, maybe it's an opportunity for you to help your curiosity. So, creativity as another skill, imagining solutions to problems. There's, a new way of doing things that are disruptive. We could talk about Jeff Bezos imagining, well, what if we shipped books around the world instead of just having a bookstore? Is there any idea you've been wondering about? I know my tailors, they started very, very small, and then they've always tried to have one new design, one new product, one new type, one new hook every season to get everyone interested, to keep them coming back. Persistent, I think you hear a lot these days about bureaucracy, so it's important to be persistent. I was reading about some of the restaurants in the United States, and they have received loans from the US government, but the loans will only be forgiven. The program's called the PPP. The loans are only forgiven if you reopen and spend 75% of your money on salaries. So a retail store that has received the loan, they can start to open, but the restaurants, they were explaining that, look, we still cannot reopen, we still can't start spending this, we need to get an extension. So they've been arranging meetings. They've been going into the media. They've been trying to get this program extended so that it works as well for restaurants as it does for stores. Goal oriented. I think um, if you do have time and you want to read about a term in business, OKRs, objectives and key results, or metrics, key performance indicators, terms like that, those are becoming more and more common in business. So if you're going to go pitch a business and you're going to try and get, your money, get your loan, get your investment, you're going to have these metrics. You're going to say, look, we're going to grow by this much, or we're going to have this many new unique customers. Having specific goals and metrics is a trend in business. It's not, you can't really go into a meeting anymore saying, oh, we're going to be bigger than we were last year. You want to be a bit more specific. You want to have, something that's very, very clear. We're using Zoom at the moment. So they say, oh, that they have 300 million users. Well, they actually don't have 300 million different people using the software. They have 300 million meeting participants. So if you go to 2 other Zoom meetings today for your other classes or with your friends, you're still going to only be counted 1 time. So their goal of, getting to, 500 million users, maybe it's different than what their bank thinks. When you have goals these days, you really want to have these goals that have a timeline, that are very, very objective, and that they have something you can measure them according to. Hardworking, just if you do read a profile of any entrepreneur, they often talk about working through difficulties, having to devote a lot of time to making it work. I think that sometimes as students, you aren't as confident as you could be. I think that this is actually, the fact that we have these time off. Maybe it's, you could, for example, if you have an assignment due, ask your friends to proofread it, and have them, they'll come back with some critiques, but it's not about you. You, by the end of it, you will have done a good job. Or there's no reason to run out of time and do anything at the last minute. I think if you take your time with all your culminatings in your courses, you're going to do well. So maybe set a schedule to work a little bit on some of these other major classes that you're working on. You've already done your culminating in our class, and it was great. But give yourself the time. I think that might also help you feel confident. And again, I think I would link this a little bit to goal setting. If you have a small goal and you reach it, I think that can help you feel good about yourself. So I know in this class, when you guys have done the little tasks each Friday, it's been well done. So hopefully, you understand that you guys are good students and you can do well with all your culminating this year. Sometimes flexibility. Has anyone gone to any restaurants for takeout? Or has anyone gone into a store at Yonge and Eglinton now that they start to reopen, since this COVID-19 has started? Have you observed, anything that might be different than what it normally was? Well, no thoughts right now. That would be, again, an example of how do we make something work. I think if you look at a sports coach, if you look at a business person, and they're trying to say, well, what do you do when there's very, very difficult situations? you would say, like, what are ways that we can make it work? So if it's a restaurant, it's like, what are ways that we can stay open? What are modifications we can do? People do spend, okay, you're right, people are spending less time in stores. So how are stores, you know staying open? How are they being flexible to, obviously no one wants to go to the Eden Center, and, well, they can't. Well, no one wants to go to the store and shop for half an hour. So has anyone seen anything interesting that a store did, to stay open during this time? Oh, I think we see curbside. Um, I was on Young Street myself, and the person from the store, I didn't go in. I didn't even know what store it was uh, putting out a sign telling people to buy things on the website, and then to come back and pick them up. You see a curbside pickup. You see stores letting people in one person at a time at Best Buy or at Shoppers Drug Mart. You see advertising the protective equipment, putting the lines on the floor so people stay apart. Uh, Something like this shows, why flexibility is important. You need to um, just be creative about how you're going to, instead of looking at all the negative things, think about how you're going to make it work. Um, Sometimes the reason that people became entrepreneurs was because they want to be their own boss. Maybe they have a child at home. They can't work 9 to 5, but they can work in the evening. Maybe they don't like, a particular dress code. They don't like a particular routine. They don't like the commute of coming downtown and taking, we might see more people working at home in all businesses, but one of the reasons people had become entrepreneurs is they wanted the freedom to set their own hours. So, uh, one thing you can do, just for today is just to think about what are some of these characteristics that you have, and what if there's something that you need to develop, like which are the ones that you do need to develop. Um, and I don't want to show these clips in front of everyone. They always say when you're doing a screencast, leave extra resources. So my way of leaving the extra resources is you can go through the slides, go back through the slides, and watch the videos if you want. So this one, was a little bit of a shorter one. If there is something like if there's something that's happening in your other classes that you want me to sort of help you with. If there's something in business, all year you've been waiting for us to cover this one topic and we haven't gotten to it yet, please send me a note so that we can make sure these classes are as good as possible. I'm not, it sort of sounds like I'm out of ideas. I actually have lots of ideas, but if there's one idea that is, really relevant to you, to me, that would be more valuable than me just doing what I want. So, the next few periods, the next few classes, if there's something about business, a question, please ask me, and then we'll make sure that the classes are a lot more receptive to your needs. Just online, I'll go back to the classroom. So here in the top right, it says little ethical dilemmas. If you would like to go through, for this week, thinking about how would you reopen, um, you could see how Twitter and Tesla, they're both in the same state, yet they have totally different ideas. You might have heard that there's a lot of some of the meat packing plants have been areas where there's been an infection. So you might, put yourself in the um, position of a small business owner. How would you reopen? Or, if you wanted to read about one of these two companies, Twitter was being a little more conscious of the employees' needs and letting them work from home. Tesla, because they're a manufacturing company, wanted the employees to come in. You can put yourself in the shoes of the owner of that business and evaluate whether or not they are doing a good job, that's going to help the business and it's going to um, help the employees. So that's up there in the top left of our classroom. And again, please send me the questions because I want to make sure I'm teaching you stuff that you are interested in hearing at the moment.